Hi, folks, and welcome to another episode of my podcast. I think today is 57, if I'm not mistaken. Just I've been so busy today that I think I remember my name and not much more. And I remember that I have Trevor joining here to discuss Africa. I'm very excited about, and many reasons. First, I've barely been in Africa myself, though I cannot complain about my travel portfolio. But Africa is, for me, still a zone that I haven't explored much. And I'm due to go to São Tomé and Príncipe in a couple of weeks. So I said, okay, that's the right time to have someone talking about Africa and the road as such, because Trevor has been to, I think, more than 100 countries. But we get into that. We try to squeeze it to 1.5 hours because there's a lot to talk about it. But yeah, and he has a website called Nomadic Backpacker that we can see on his hat. We'll talk about his writing as well, not just the travel, the writing. Here it is, the brand. And so that's what we are here for. For the next 1 hour, 1.5 hours, we'll talk about travel with a focus in Africa. So if it's something that you are curious or keen to hear about it, stay around. If you know someone who is into the topic, share. This is going to be live, and then this is going to be available for future occasions, so people can watch it next week or whenever they have availability. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, one of the favors you can do is just press that subscribe button below. And if you enjoy the kind of conversation I have here, raw, real, and straightforward, there's a button there to express satisfaction, which is the like button. So without any further delays, Trevor, you are very welcome to my podcast.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having me, Vitor. Yeah, greetings from Athens.
You are in Athens. When did you arrive there?
Oh, just on Friday. Excuse me.
On
Friday. So yeah.
Are you traveling around that part of Europe, or what's the plan?
Yeah, I'm basically just now filling in the rest of the European countries that I hadn't been to.
Mm-hmm.
So I flew from Dominican Republic actually last week, 10 days ago, maybe, I don't know. And then I flew to Madrid and went to Nice and went to Monaco. Then flew to Italy. Then I flew from Italy to here. And then Tuesday I will go to Cyprus, which I haven't been to, and then the northern part of Cyprus. Yeah, and then go to Turkey, and then I want to travel east to Iraqi Kurdistan.
Yeah,
so that will be it for a little while.
Yeah, there's a lot to explore. I haven't been to Monaco myself. How is it, apart from being expensive?
Yeah, it's I wouldn't say it's the most prettiest of places, because it's all about the money, and there's condominiums everywhere, and everybody's driving around in Porsches and Ferraris, and you can smell the money. You can smell the money. Yes,
you find yourself poor, in comparison to.
And they are preparing for the Formula One Grand Prix, which is coming up soon. So there's a lot of construction going on for that in preparation. But it was interesting to see. I didn't stay the night. That's a little bit out of my budget.
To
actually stay a night in Monaco. Imagine, I'm not sure if people are doing couch surfing in Monaco or not.
Maybe you sit on the couch and there is some cash underneath. You never know.
A couple of grand fell out their loose pocket money. Fell out of their pocket.
Just in terms of background, I can gather your accent. So you're British. From what part of England are you?
Yeah, the south part of England, but north of London, maybe 1 hour north. Milton Keynes is the town where I grew up. It's famous for the MK Dons football club now, and it's not far from the Formula One circuit at Silverstone. So it's maybe 50 miles, 80 kilometers north of London, the direction Birmingham.
So you do you remember when the travel bug kick in?
Yeah, around 1990. So I was like about 22, 23 at that time. Yeah, the whole story started really was, I used to cycle race. So I grew up with heroes like Sean Kelly and Stephen Roach from Ireland, and Robert Miller from Scotland, and the Tour de France in the mid 80s. So I was a cycle racer, and I used to buy this magazine called Cycling World, and it just doesn't focus on cycle racing. There was a chap from Manchester called Nick Sanders, who also raced on the continent when he was younger, but he turned into an adventure cyclist. And he went around the world in 80 days on a bicycle. He went around the coast of Britain, and one particular article in the magazine was he rode from Manchester to Timbuktu. And the editor of the magazine wrote, this may tickle your appetite for adventure. So I was already cycling, but then from that summer, I remember I bought some panniers for my racing bike, and went youth hosteling around England and Wales. So that was the late 1980s, and then I got into walking, and I walked from Land's End to John O'Groats, so southwest England to northeast Scotland, and actually, I was up in Scotland, and I was talking to the manageress, and she told me, she used to work the summer season in Scotland, and then in the winter time she used to go fruit picking in Tasmania, and I think that winter. Come October, I booked my tickets on a round the world trip to Australia. So that was the beginning of the backpacking adventure.
And did you ever manage that after 30 years? I think it's 30 years since that time. You've been to more than 100 countries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 112 that are listed by the UN, United Nations member states, plus a few others I include that are not included by the UN, Taiwan, Hong Kong, etc. Kosovo. They don't have full membership, but
Yeah, that's quite a list. Okay, let's focus on Africa just as a starting point, and maybe touch base on a couple of others. So I would like to know, what inspired you to travel to Africa? What was the driver?
It's the dark continent, isn't it? You get to a certain point where the traveling, in Europe, Australia, or wherever, it becomes a little bit predictable, doesn't it? And the idea of Africa, it gives you a little bit more, wow, I'm going on an adventure. Because even now still, you get all the travelers, backpackers, they're still going to Thailand, still going to India, Australia for working visas and everywhere else, but Africa, almost nobody goes there. Obviously people go there, but compared with the rest of the world, Central America, South America, all of Europe, Southeast Asia. So I went to Morocco. Morocco was my first experience of Africa. A little bit, less adventurous than the rest of many of the countries in Africa, but still, it was going across the Straits of Gibraltar from the bottom of Spain to Tangier, and it was like quite an adventure.
Did you get to Morocco by sea?
Yes, from Algeciras to Tangiers.
Yeah. I think I shared this idea with a friend of mine who's also a travel writer, like yourself, that the way you arrive to a country will change the way you perceive it. Like if you arrive by sea, by plane, by train, the whole journey is also part of how you're going to experience after. There is some about the way you land. So if you arrive by sea, I think that impacts your whole experience. Maybe in Morocco that's the same. Like I arrived there on a Ryanair plane, so there was nothing romantic about it. But you arriving by sea, I think there is something. I think it's something epic. Or maybe I'm just exaggerating here, but I see it that way.
Yeah, I wouldn't say only sea. I would include in that in land border crossings.
Yeah.
We can discuss this a bit later, but I love to go overland travels. Like long 20 country trips with no flying. So you're in one country and you see the landscape changing gradually. It becomes from going from greener landscape to desert landscape, or the flat, or to the mountains. You see change, and then you're in one big country, and slowly you can see some influences from the next country already on the other side of the border. Cultural differences, whereas if you fly in, you're going from Dublin to Marrakesh, on a Ryanair flight, and it changes so quickly, doesn't it? It goes from Western European culture straight into Marrakesh, So I do like that, whether arriving by boat or arriving by land, that's my favorite thing.
Yeah, I would agree. Like see the gradual transformation. It's also fascinating, and even when it happens within a massive country. Like I did a Trans-Siberian, and I saw, like, every time I woke up, I felt I was in a different nation.
When I went across in winter, it was a bit crazy. You can't see much out the windows because the windows are so dirty, and there's lots of trees, like for thousands of kilometers.
Yeah. So after Morocco, what was your second country in Africa?
Yeah, I actually went to Morocco twice, 2008 and again in 2009. The second was Egypt. Also quite tame, but in a way, it's got its own chaos. I traveled from. I was in Israel, and I crossed into Jordan, and then I took a boat from the bottom of Jordan into the Sinai, which is the eastern part of Egypt. Yeah, so also again I see the gradual transformation. And that was 2010. I would say the third country. Let me think about that. Was probably again Morocco, and I crossed into Mauritania. So I would say Mauritania was my third African country.
Is it fair to say that when you get to Mauritania, you start to see real Africa or deep Africa?
It's Arabic Africa still. Everybody's speaking French. They speak funny French there. They speak French, but they put Arabic words in the middle of it. It's kind of a little bit hard to get used to that. But you're in the Morocco is pretty developed as in infrastructure. The highways are good. There's buses everywhere, and then you're going into Mauritania. It's not one of the poorest countries in Africa, but the level of infrastructure or the state of the roads, the shops, everything is completely, very dramatically less developed.
Yeah. So
everybody's walking around more in robes, and from the desert, from the Berber tribes and everywhere else, more than Morocco. So it's quite a big contrast, even though it's still West Africa. They're speaking French and very Muslim.
Yeah. So you mentioned that we don't know much about Africa. It's the dark continent. So I have a question in terms of expectations and reality, but I know the expectations for Africa are not as clear as they'll be, say, to South America or to Asia. But there is still some sort of thing that we have in mind when we visit the place, even if the information is very small. So how was, let's say, what you were expecting to see versus what you came across in general?
In general, obviously, before I went to Morocco or Mauritania, let's say, I'd been already to, I think, around 80 countries already at that time. So I was quite used to, going from sometimes, quite developed into some urban chaos. You got to just go with the flow in Africa, okay? It's as a backpacker, okay? Because there's obviously different types of traveling, and if you're going on, all-inclusive safaris, not my thing, but it's if somebody wants to do that, it's up to them, isn't it? But if you're traveling on the cheap, accommodation can be very basic. Obviously, there are luxury accommodation options everywhere you go. But if you're a backpacker, you're roughing it, and some of the hotels are really basic, but still acceptable. Like there's, but yeah, when you're traveling, you're organizing everything on the ground. Okay, I would say 80% of Africa is not online. So for the new age people who grew up with a cell phone in the hand already, they have to be realistic in that stuff isn't online. Okay, so I was traveling, when we had Lonely Planet books, you wanted to call home, you bought a phone card and went to the phone box, you picked up mail from the post office, there was no information at your fingertips, you had the Lonely Planet, you had word of mouth, because now everybody's talking on their phones to people back home. Back then, more people spoke to each other. There was like an information traveler's grapevine of, the good places to go, where the bus stations were. Plus, you've got the basic stuff in the Lonely Planet, where the bus stations are and everything else. So that was, and I think you have to rely more on your wits, which stands me in good stead, because like I said, I did 70 countries before I had a smartphone. I probably did 45 countries before there was, you could Google anything, whether you got a laptop or you went to an internet cafe,
Yeah.
So you got used to buying the guidebook and talking to people, finding out the information, and that's how it worked, And it's still, Africa is good in that a lot of hotels and things like that are on Google Maps, but they're not on booking sites. So if you're used to, booking hotel reservations, mostly, forget it, because all the good bargains they're on Google Maps, but they're not on any booking sites, So I think for me, you have to take it as it comes, and you adopt a different strategy when you're traveling, in that, you can just go somewhere and, look for the poorest part of town and find a hotel. Normally around the bus stations, so you can always find, and, you just stay one night, and then you can, find some more information. A lot of places, even if they're quite poor, they still have tourist information centers, so, or, people who speak English and can help you, find some whatever you need.
Yeah. It seems to me, from the way you are speaking, because I think we are around the same age, that is going back to how travel used to be, that you just get on a plane and then try to find accommodation. You ask people around where to eat, where you can stay for the night, and then you take it as it comes. So like back, let's say, like in the 90s, where internet was not a thing. So there is some nostalgia around it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think Africa is a return to that, especially for me, because I'm in Europe here, and I'm making multiple bookings because I was in Europe last summer. And to be frank, if you don't make a booking, you don't get a bed. You know, the hostels are booked out, and you'll be, you know, walking around Madrid looking for a room, and they're going to say like 150 euros, you know, because that's all that's left. Yeah, off season is a little bit different, but yeah, in Africa, because nobody has booking websites, you know, nobody's on booking.com. You can just go in there. You look for on Google Maps as a, you know, Google Maps for me replaces the map that was in the Lonely Planet travel guide.
Yeah.
It just tells you where the hotel is, you know. You can see how it's going to be if it's a, you know, if it's got a swimming pool. Yeah, it's not going to be in my budget. But if it says 1-star hotel, it's going to be, you know, perfect for me, you know. And then you just go there. Of course, you know, as long as you don't arrive at 10 o'clock at night, you know, you try to get there at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You have first pick of the rooms, you know. So yeah, that's it. I think there was more freedom in that you could be more spontaneous. Whereas if you're trying to be spontaneous in Europe in the summer, forget it, because you can't, because you know, you're sleeping and you think, oh yeah, I like it here, as I met some good people, I like the town, and you want to stay, and the owner of the hotel says, well, sorry, but like we're sold out, you know.
Yeah.
We only had your bed, it was only available for that night, and then for the next 2 weeks it's booked, we are fully booked. And you have to go, you know, so you're forced to, you know, be unfree by needing to change, you know, because you have to adapt, you know. So
yeah, I'm just trying to figure it out. How are those interactions? Let's say when you knock the door of the hotel and you ask for a bed, because I haven't done much of that, but I'm curious to see, you know, how people react and what sort of vibe you perceive between you and the staff. Because the only situation I can relate to that is when I was traveling in the Balkans and I wanted to go to Bosnia and I took the wrong bus, so I ended up in Dubrovnik, and the last stop was Dubrovnik itself, and it was around, I don't know, say 11 in the evening. And the bus driver just said, hey, no problem, you're in Dubrovnik, just knock a couple of doors on those buildings, you'll find a bed. And I did, and I just paid on the spot. But still, you know, they spoke some English, we were somehow familiar to each other. So how it is to arrive as an European to Africa and ask for a bed?
I've never had to cold call on anybody's door looking for a bed. Yeah, I always try. The one rule in Africa that is mine, but maybe it makes common sense. You start the day, if you're traveling anywhere, you start as early as you can. Then you've got all day for, you know, to make further arrangements, you know, once the bus breaks down 10 times, you know, and you arrive late. You know, the bus drivers also are quite good, you know, as you said, you know, they know the needs of a traveler, you know. You haven't got family in the destination, so they know you need a hotel, and many times they do actually help you out, or you know, there's always some people hanging around the bus stations, you know, tuk-tuk drivers or taxi drivers even, you know, and they can, you know, or they've got somebody they know who rents out rooms, you know. So I've never actually had to cold call, but I've arrived in a few places without any idea, because it was in Madagascar, and Madagascar, and it was quite remote. I just had intel that there was a couple of hotels in town, and it was 1 o'clock in the morning, and just got lucky that some guy went around with me and banging on the door and then calling the people to wake them up to come and let me in, you know. I've never had to, one night, yes, but never had to, like, you know, sleep out because I couldn't find nowhere to stay, you know. It's
I think, like,
but people are good spirited, and, you know, they want to look after you, you know, whether it's Africa, Southeast Asia, you know. They're sometimes they're happy to see that you're visiting that place, and they will go out of their way to help you, you know.
Yeah, that happens quite often when you are in a place that it's not in the touristic route. People will appreciate the fact that you are there, and they want to make sure that you have a pleasant stay and you bring the best possible memories. It's quite common that they will look after you because you are just one in a million. So and the opposite is also true. When you are another one visiting them and they are tired of seeing tourists, then sometimes you can be mistreated because the locals are just exhausted. So it's just normal. So where else have you been in Africa? Take me through like a couple of countries where you've been. How did it go?
Yeah, so the time that I went to Mauritania, I continued to the Senegal, into the Gambia, crossed back into Senegal, went to Guinea-Bissau, I went to Guinea, went to Sierra Leone, went to Liberia, and after that I'd had enough, because West Africa is I think that Central Africa, like a DRC and the Congo, would be even tougher. Okay, and I'm not sure I always have the mental ability to endure the chaos. West Africa, for me, was quite a nightmare. I've been there a couple of times, and it's always quite hard, and it gets to a point where I just need a little bit more of something organized, because Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, the roads are the worst that I have traveled on. And it's always, when you're traveling, there's always a waiting game, the people say, oh yeah, come at 7 o'clock, in the morning. And at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you are still there waiting for one person, Everything is on Africa time, okay? So, the locals there, if you tell them, oh, the bus is in 12 hours, they will sit there in the chair for another 12 hours and don't complain, They just sit there and wait and, we will go when we're ready,
Yeah.
Whereas, we're a little bit more impatient, or especially me, we want to go, we want to, arrive, we want to go early, so we don't arrive at 2 o'clock in the morning, So so I flew out of Monrovia, which is in Liberia, and then I flew to Turkey and continued some travels for some time.
Yeah. So you referred like West Africa. Is it? Am I correct to say that West Africa is closer to Europe and the West as such? Like the West, as we think of Europe and North America.
No, West Africa is just.
No, I mean West Africa versus East Africa, so they'll be closer to us within the Africa region, because, like, let's say in Europe we can say there is, let's say, UKI, and there is Central Europe, and there's the Mediterranean countries and Eastern Europe. So I think in Africa there will be also different regions. Let's put it like that. Is West Africa like a subsection of Africa, in your opinion?
As the way we segregate West Africa from, in my day, there was no Central Europe. It was Eastern Europe, which is everything east of the Berlin Wall, and then the Western Europe was everything to the west. I grew up with that. West Africa is West Africa. You have West Africa, then you have a little bit of North Africa, then you have East Africa and Southern Africa and Central Africa. Yeah.
Did you make it to South Africa?
I did, but not that trip. Yeah, another time. Yes.
How did that go, especially with the British accent?
Oh, yeah. On that the trip that I went to South Africa, I traveled from Cairo to Cape Town overland. So at that point, I'd already been on the road for 2 years already, and I flew from somewhere to somewhere, Georgia to Cairo, and then I went all the way down to Cape Town overland. So 10 countries, 19,000 kilometers. It's a tough trip, but enjoyable. But because each country has its challenges. Egypt, there's quite a lot of quite a lot of aggro. If you go to the pyramids and, there's 20 people trying to sell you something, a ride on their camel, and it just doesn't stop. And then you go to Sudan and it's very peaceful and calm and completely the opposite to Egypt. And then Ethiopia changes again, and then Kenya, and it's like, they speak English again. And, it's complete change when you cross the border from those countries, just complete opposite. Going into South Africa, wasn't, they're used to the language, there's, I would say, it's not my favorite country, even though people love it, but I had a bad experience. So,
do you want to dig into that, or do you want to keep it confidential?
No, it's all over my blog. I was attacked by 2 guys with knives.
Oh.
So basically, everybody said, "Oh, Africa's dangerous. Oh, I'll go to South Africa. It's safe." It's not. It's completely wrong. South Africa has a very, very high crime rate.
Yes.
You can. So I arrive in Cape Town, and it's 7:00 in the evening. Okay, and I'm thinking, it should be okay. I'd be careful, and but I was in the, it could have happened anyway. It can happen in London, it can happen in Athens, it can happen in wherever. So just a question of being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I was attacked by 2 guys with knives. On my last stop in Africa was Cape Town, and I got almost nobbled right at the end, the finishing line.
And were you hurt, or they just got your belongings and ran?
No, they wanted my phone.
Okay.
I didn't have a phone. Like that confused them. I didn't have a phone at that time. I had a small tablet, which was in my backpack. And I got like the small backpack on the front, and then you put the bigger backpack over the top, and then I've got a little carabiner, a little carabiner. Okay.
Yeah.
And I clip them onto my jeans as extra security. Okay. So they can pull all they want, but they, the bag is not going to come away, is it? And I don't know. They wanted my phone, and I didn't have one, and they didn't believe me because like everybody has a phone, but truthfully, I didn't have the phone, And then I was on the floor, and it was like a big scrummage, and they're trying to get my bag, and they're trying to pull my bag, but obviously it's clipped on, and they couldn't get my bag, and it was taking them time. Too much time. And then suddenly there was a 3rd guy appeared. I vaguely remember seeing him, and suddenly they've gone. And I tried to stand up, and I fell over because the adrenaline is shaking, running through my legs, and I couldn't stand up. But actually my small bag was like over my back, and it made me a top heavy or back heavy. And I was just like falling over because I couldn't stand up, plus the shaking of the legs, and I fell into the road and nearly got hit by a car. But it put so they didn't get anything. The short end of the story is they didn't get anything, but I was very, very shaken. And it put a spoiler on the end a spoiler on my trip, right at the finishing line, to almost, get a knife stuck in my leg or something like that. I was like checking, it's like, well, nothing hurts. Like, I got a bit of blood, but like, I don't think I've got any like knife wounded, anything.
Yeah.
But
Did you consider reporting it to the police, or there was no point?
No, because I know the situation. I have some friends from there, and they told me that the area, wasn't the best. There's a homeless shelter nearby, and there's no cameras, and nothing's. They didn't get anything, and I was lucky, I guess, because it could have ended a lot worse. So I'm grateful for the 3rd guy that appeared out of nowhere and was gone, and they scarpered, So wrong place at the wrong time. It can happen. It's not against South Africa. But it happened for me in South Africa. So, that would be my experience, because if something happened, and I went to wherever, if I went to Rome and I got robbed in Rome, which is quite possible, Rome wouldn't be on my favorite list, because of something that happened, so.
Yeah. I only had one bad experience abroad. I was only robbed in India. That was it. And we were in a club, and I left the club hammered. So we got like a few drinks, and I got a taxi with two guys on the front, which is something you shouldn't do. If there are two guys on the front, they are preparing something, or I didn't care, or I didn't see. I don't remember. I just had too much alcohol in my blood, and they just took me out of the car. They I think they kicked me on my knee that I fell. They took my wallet. They grabbed a couple of notes, and they gave me back the wallet. That was it. They could have been worse. They could have taken my documents. But that's the biggest nightmare, is if you end up without any paper in those countries. It's a big headache. That can, of course, injuries is worse, but the second nightmare to me is have no paper.
I think when you're going out and you plan on having a couple of beers, the idea is take what you want to spend plus a little bit more in another pocket to get a taxi home. Nobody's going to steal my wallet because I don't have a wallet. I can't lose my wallet if I don't have a wallet.
Good rule.
I've got a pocket full of. You can't see that. Okay, I've got a pocket full of coins.
Yeah.
That is enough for the day. And everything else is like hidden in the security belt, or depending on the hotel, you leave it in the hotel, in a bag that's locked, rather than be walking around with it. Especially going out if a time when you think you might be a little bit vulnerable. You have a few beers or whatever, and people will sadly, unfortunately, want to take advantage of your situation. So yeah.
Talking of alcohol, how is the whole thing of drinking in Africa? Because we are used to the pub culture in England, in Ireland. How is it in Africa overall?
The Muslim countries, so Morocco, yes, you can get, but it's you have to go to some bars or bigger hotels. But generally, So Morocco you can get, but it's not in your face. Like the beer culture is not in your face. All the guys are sitting around drinking tea, or coffee. Mauritania, I can't remember. And then it changes a little bit. I can't remember in Senegal how it was. But once you're below, you're into the Christian countries or below the Muslim countries, then alcohol is freely available. Ethiopia, yes. In Sudan, you can probably get, but I don't know. Normally when I'm in Muslim countries, I abstain. I have no problem in not drinking alcohol in those countries. I'm not going looking for just to have a beer. I drink a tea or whatever. That's my thing. But the rest of Africa, the beer is consumed lots. Kenya, they're drinking as much as people in Europe drink.
And what is the party like? Let's say if you want to go out for beers, like are people accessible for a chat, or what sort of interactions usually happens after drinking?
Oh, Yeah, you're the wrong. I'm the wrong person to ask that type of question. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of drinking beer in bars at night. Yeah, it can always get a bit rowdy. You know, the guys in many countries, you know, they drink beer like water. You know, and so they get quite drunk quite quickly. And I'm always hesitant to get involved with that. If I meet some travelers, yes, I will go. But in Africa, mostly, yeah, you're not really on the traveling circuit all the time. You know, a lot of the time you're spending time alone. You know, if I'm now I don't drink, but before, yes, I would drink, and I prefer to have a beer, you know, in the afternoon, or in the evening. Yeah, buy some beers at the supermarket and sit on the balcony at night.
Yeah.
Some countries in Africa, yeah, I've had a lot of criticism about my feelings about that. You know, I was in Sierra Leone. Yeah, it's also a bit crazy there. And I went to a bar where they have lots of expats. So there's NGOs and British military advisors. And that's wherever they all meet for a cup of tea or whatever, or coffee, you know. And one guy, he put me aside and says, it's not safe to be out at night. Okay. At 6 o'clock, it starts to get dark. Around this area, there are no bars. There are no shops. There is nobody on the street. It's dark outside. He says, there's no reason why you should be outside. He said 5 o'clock, go to the supermarket, get some beers and sit on your balcony and, you know, watch the street. And there's no, you might see a few motorbikes. But that was one warning I got when I was in Sierra Leone. You know, obviously depending on where you are staying in the area, but the area where I was, his words were true. There was nobody on the street. And when there's nobody on the street, it's not a good idea to be walking around. And there's no reason really to be out, because there's nothing open. You know, by like 10 blocks, there was nothing open after 7 o'clock at night. There's no, you know, you're going like window shopping, you know, it's just not going to happen. So, you know, but that was Sierra Leone, you know. And other places I've gone out, I've been out in Guinea-Bissau, just walk around a couple of blocks from the hotel and go to a bar, and, you know, it depends where you are, you know. But I'm always extra cautious, you know, and because you're normally on your own, I have to think on my feet, and I've only got, you know, I've got no backup, you know. So if something happens to me, nobody's going to know. So the interaction. Yeah, I'm not the best person to talk about interactions with locals too much. You know, I'm not always so open in those sort of environments. You know.
Yeah.
Some people are like Johnny, you know, like our friend Johnny. You know,
he's fine. For the drinking and party, I live for him.
Yeah, he loves that. If you want to talk about interactions with locals, he will talk to anybody. But me, I'm not so.
We are all different.
Yes, exactly.
I want to ask about this travel solo. So you travel on your own, which is not something that everyone is able to. Like I do maybe like 70% of my travels by myself. Is it something that you always fancy, or you discovered along the way as an exercise that you are into?
Yeah, I've always been used to doing things on my own. I start my trips on my own. But, you know, when you're backpacking around Australia, New Zealand, or wherever, you know, you meet people. You did, you know, when I was there pre-internet, you know, you met people very easily, you know. You click with people. You travel for a few days, for 1 week with them, you know, and then, you know, you split your way, you know, you go separate. So yes, you're on your own, but you're never really alone. But if you're talking about Africa, yeah, because it's a different way of traveling there. In Africa, there are hardcore backpackers like me, or there's people going on safaris, or there's people with overland trucks. So, yeah, people like me, sometimes there's backpacker hostels, or cheap hotels. But mostly, you go these places, you're on your own. I didn't see anybody in Guinea-Bissau, Guinea, Sierra Leone, like 4 or 5 weeks. I was the only white person for miles around. And then, you go somewhere and suddenly you meet some traveler from Belgium or whatever, you're talking nonstop, because you've had like a pretty lonely time just talking to locals for what you need, talking in French or talking in whatever language they're talking there,
And how do you go about keeping yourself entertained? And I'm not being like devil's advocate. I think I can relate to that, but I would like to understand what's your, let's say, your strategy to make every day enjoyable. Because if there are not much interactions and sometimes there's not a lot going on, so what is the flavor?
I think you learn. So I was thinking about that earlier today. You learn, because I was thinking you're going to ask this question. You learn to slow down, and my style is overland travel. So I arrive in Egypt and I don't take another plane till Cairo. And the thrill for me is the journey. So the way I normally do it, like I want to start. Okay, there is the border crossing. Okay, it's an obvious way. You're going to Egypt. The only logical way was to go to Sudan. You need a Sudan visa. After that, you need the Ethiopia visa, and then you go into Kenya, and it gets a little bit easier with the way it goes. But you basically go from you go where the transport is. And sometimes the countries are a little bit more touristy developed, or sometimes they're not, like West Africa, like Guinea-Bissau. There's very little tourism infrastructure, whereas in Europe, you go to Barcelona, there's 20 museums, 10 cathedrals, 5 streets that you must see and everything else. You go to somewhere in Sierra Leone, there might be one mosque, that's worth to see, So for me, that the journey was always the important bit, not the sights. I've been in hundreds of small town places across the world that they do see travelers, because there's quite a few people like me that you just turn up in just a town, and the roads in Africa sometimes are very tough. The journeys are long, it's hot, it's dusty, and you just need to get off the road. Say you've done 2 days on a bus, and you're just completely exhausted. You just like go somewhere and it's like stay 3 days. One to catch up some sleep, get some nice food. Another day to do laundry. Half a day to look around to see if there's anything worth interesting to see in the town. Oh, there's a church, there's a mosque, or something that's of some interest, and then you do it all over again. You go to the next. So for me, especially in Africa, because you go to a place like Zimbabwe, it's very big, but there's a national park. There's a Chimanimani National Park. There's the Great Zimbabwe Ancient Ruins, and there's Victoria Falls. It's 3 highlights in a country that's probably, I don't know, 3 times, I don't know exactly, 3 times as big as Ireland, So, 3 highlights that you can go that are worth seeing, in a country that size, So, you're obviously going to need some time to get there, And the buses, you get there and it's going to be 3 o'clock, and then at 3 o'clock, most of the buses start in the morning. So by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, there's no more buses to anywhere. So you just stay for one night,
Yeah.
And so it's not like you go to Europe, you've got a whole checklist of hotels and museums that you really want to see. Africa for me, especially, is more about the journey. To say that you completed a massive overland journey of 20,000 kilometers, from north to south, and geographical extremes are a nice thing for me, like border crossings, the northernmost point of Africa, the westernmost point of Africa, the southernmost point of Africa. They are more the highlights for me, rather than another bunch of museums, or another church, or something like that.
I have that too. Like, one of the reasons why I did the Trans-Siberian once I had the opportunity was because I wanted to be on the longest train route in the road, which is from Moscow to Vladivostok, 10,000 kilometers, 6 days. People ask me why you didn't get off the train, and I would love to, but I have to choose. Either I do the whole journey or I get off the train. So I decided that occasion I will just complete the journey. Maybe in a future opportunity I will drop here and there, but I wanted to go from A to Z, as you said. So I totally relate to that. But most people would think we are nuts.
It's a long way, huh?
Yeah, it is a long way. Yeah. Talk to me about border crossing. Any spicy adventure, any bureaucratic nightmare you encountered?
Sadly not, no.
So it was always straightforward.
Yeah?
It was always straightforward.
Yes, in that, from traveling, the Wikipedia, like Googling the visa requirements of which country, whether you need a visa on arrival, you can still get, whether you need an e-visa, where you have to go to the embassy before. You go already forewarned with the situation at the border. It's no good going to the border, with no visa, and they say, sorry, you need to get a visa from the embassy, and it's 3,000 miles away. Okay. That actually did happen in.
I knew it.
Yeah, I know. I forgot about it. Yeah, I was going from London to Timbuktu, and you could always get the visa for Mauritania at the border. But you have to remember, TIA, this is Africa, okay? Stuff changes with no reason, okay? So I've gone all the way from Agadir all the way down to Dakar, 28 hours on a bus. And I knew that the situation of how to get from the bottom southernmost town of Morocco into Mauritania was to get a ride with Mauritania businessmen going home. And they knew that, and that was how it worked. They used to drive around town looking for people coming off the bus and say, yeah, you're going to Mauritania, obviously, because there's no reason to come here. And they said, oh, you have a visa? I said, yeah, I can get on the border. No, you can't. Like, since when? Oh, 1 week. And he said, look around, all these trucks. These are Moroccan trucks going food delivery, going to Mauritania. They're all queued up. They're all backed up. He said, nobody's gone across the border in 1 week because the Mauritania people changed their rules on the visa at the border. I was like, really? It involved, because I met some other travelers in the Traveler Hotel, and they were, some people were going back to Rabat. Some people were flying somewhere else to get a visa or just go home. And I'm thinking, I had like 8 weeks to get to Timbuktu. I was like, okay, Mauritania will still be there another time, So I just, I just went 28 hours back the other way. Because, there was no, but I didn't get to the border. I think it's about 200 kilometers from the last town to the border. So it's not like I got at the border and they said no, but almost,
Yeah.
So the next time I went to the embassy in Rabat, got my visa already, and went down and got it, But they've changed that, because they reintroduced the visa on arrival. Then they stopped all that. You have to get an e-visa. So, things change. And that happened quite quickly in Africa. There's no 2-year warning, in 2026, we're going to introduce a visa, They do it overnight and say, no, you got to do an e-visa now. So
yeah, it's a different pace. Yeah, so one can live without alcohol, but it's not the same when it comes to food. So how do you go about eating? In Africa, do you grab some stuff from the supermarket? Do you do it in the hostel? Do you try to sit in a restaurant, a mix of everything, or just take me through your whole experience?
Yeah, a mix of everything, really. A lot of time, accommodation in Africa can be surprisingly expensive. Okay, you go to Mali and it's like $30 for a horrible room, but you go to the restaurant and it costs you like 30 cents. So generally, yeah, when I'm traveling in Africa, you're not staying in a nice backpacker hostel with a self-catering kitchen downstairs or upstairs. You basically get a room and a toilet, and anything else beyond a table and a chair is luxury, So you just go into the local market. You go where the locals are eating. If there's a restaurant and there's no people anywhere in the world, you just keep on walking past. You choose a restaurant that's got a lot of people in it. The food is going, turnover is good. There's people there because the food is okay. So it doesn't matter whether you're in Thailand or anywhere in Africa. It's just the quality of the food. Sometimes, it's not the best, but it varies so much from country to country in Africa as to what the locals are eating, which is what you have to eat. But yeah, you can be I was in Khartoum in Sudan, and you go to the little corner store, and they've got tins of Heinz baked beans, which is like, oh wow, I buy two tins, and go and buy some bread, and make myself, just eat them out of the tin, like that. It was different, Yeah, you eat whatever you eat whatever the locals are eating, you're not eating like in inexpensive restaurants mostly. There's no need to, the locals don't have the money to go into expensive top-end hotels just to get a decent food. The food on the street is quite acceptable. It's cooked. What more do you want? It's just not what you're used to, or the nutritional value might not be so good, but it's sustaining. That's all you need when you're traveling.
Yeah, it makes the trip. No? That's it.
Yeah. You have to adjust. You don't go to some country and expect or even want to eat Western food. It's always, you've been on the road for months and you just want to have a pizza or something like that. I get it. But I lived on rice and vegetables when I was in Southeast Asia for months and months and months. It was fine for me.
Do you miss home when you are, let's say, in the middle of Africa or in the Far East? And how do you handle those homesick feelings?
Ooh. Yeah, I think I think there's two talents necessary for a long-term traveler. One is the ability to sleep wherever, despite the noise, despite being uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have this ability. Okay, this talent is something I don't have. Homesick. I don't know. I just things are a little bit different in my private life now. Much different from before. But I never, I never got homesick. So that is one ability, which is a good talent to have when you're traveling.
Yeah.
But I would say not every day is good. There were a lot of, just as you're working a 9 to 5 job or a 10 to 6 job, you have bad days. It's the longer, like for me, the longer I'm away. I was away for almost 4 years of continual traveling. Okay, I stopped a couple of times for 3 or 4 months, but I didn't go back to Europe. I didn't have any, familiarity. I just stopped. I volunteered on a guest house, and recharges the mental batteries. But I didn't feel the need, I really, to go back, and to end the trip. You get into a zone where you're concentrating on the journey and you're just loving every moment of it. But my private life has changed quite a bit since those days.
Yeah. I saw it on X. You got married recently.
I did. Yeah, in January. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
So do you have a base now? Or there's a place where you consider yourself home?
Yeah, Mexico now.
Huh?
Yeah. Things happened during the COVID pandemic. I was away traveling. I was already starting traveling. Before everything started shutting down, and going home wasn't an option. So I just stayed in Kenya. And yeah, as we know, at that time nobody knew how it would go. It's going to be like a couple of weeks and it'd be finished. Nobody knew. So I was in Kenya, and then listening frantically to the reports from the president. And they shut the border, shut the airport, and that was it. I was stuck in Kenya. I couldn't get out if I wanted to, so you just have to deal with it. The idea there was, don't get caught, because it will cost you a lot of money. So don't get caught running a temperature. So every time you went into the supermarket, they zapped your temperature. Okay. And if you were running too hot, they put you in a quarantine hotel for $100 a night for a minimum of 10 days. Okay. So that was the whole idea of don't get sick. So you purposely avoided contact with people, just for whether you thought you were strong enough, whether you believed in the COVID, whether you thought you were strong enough not to get sick, because even if you got it and you've got no symptoms, you'll be running a temperature, and they zap you when you go into the supermarket, and then they put you in a quarantine center. So that was the whole idea. And then the EU started organizing evacuation flights. So I ended up in Europe again, and I was moving around the Balkans, dodging the lockdowns and dodging the restrictions, because I had nowhere to go. I couldn't go back to England because of the requirements that Boris put on my father, that he had to stay at home alone. So I had nowhere to go. So I just stayed away. So and then I was in Turkey, and they started shutting down, and I was asking a friend, like, where can I go? Where can I go? Oh, Mexico. It's still open. Okay, so I went to Mexico, and that was, and then obviously I was in Guatemala or El Salvador, and I got a call from my sister saying my father had passed. So I had to go back to Mexico, back to London to be with my sister, and go to the funeral and everything. So my home base was in England at finish now, because I everything was with my father. So the house had to be sold So that was the end of my base as well. When I was, here, there, and everywhere, thinking of what to do and whatever. But so my personal situation changed dramatically, from having that. But I'm happy, and I met my now wife. We met in Mexico. She's from Mexico, and I'm now married. So,
Yeah. Do you still have an appetite to travel like before, or do you think it will change going forward?
Yeah, it's changed a little bit, I must say. I don't know whether it's I'm getting older now too much, or I'm just tired of seeing things, or a combination of everything that I missed some normality to be at home with my wife. I miss that. So it's always at the back of my mind that the travels aren't like they used to be. But that can be from many different things. You get older. I've been traveling for like 30 years since I went to Australia. So you do get tired of that. The travel life doesn't last forever.
Yeah.
I would say.
100%. And once you repeat something that you already experienced, then the novelty is not there anymore. So sometimes there is, I think sometimes there's more entertaining about doing nothing because you did a lot, which is kind of a paradox. But for people who are all over the place, it's a fact because there is not much flavor in going here and there because you did it. Of course, you can always repeat and it won't be the same because the place has changed, you have changed, but the whole adrenaline, it won't be as it was in the past. At least the levels will never ever be the same because you went through that process. So somehow you exhausted it. So, and there is some excitement about, as you just said, regular and frugal life.
Yeah, but even before I got married, I noticed myself slowing down and changing. I was not in a hurry so much. Like, oh, what did you do today? Oh, I went to the cafe, had a breakfast. Walk around a bit, and it was like I went back to the hostel. Yeah, talked to some people, then go out again, walk around, get some food, and that was my day. Yeah. And like people say, oh, you didn't go to the museum? No, what museum? What did you do? Oh, I sat in a couple of cafes watching people. It was like far more exciting than seeing another church, for example.
Yeah. Sometimes there's a lot in little. I would say. Let me just go back to Africa. So I'm trying to figure it out. That I'm trying to imagine actually someone watching us who was thinking, after this podcast, I'm almost ready to pack, but I'm still hesitant. There is still some psychological barrier. So how would you encourage them to visit Africa for the first time if they haven't?
Just go. It will be okay. It will be okay. Yes, it's like the dark continent, and there's never. Is it Paul Thoreau? He wrote that there's only ever bad news that comes out of Africa. It's not all true, but it's sort of there is some truth to that comment. If you look at the 20 poorest countries regarding the GDP, out of 20 countries, 18 of them will be in Africa. But just go and embrace the moment, and just go and don't be worried. People they speak English, but they speak French in West Africa and English mostly, and the rest of it. But even without the language, you will survive and you will enjoy it. There's lots of not just adventures where what's going to happen. There's your own personal adventure. You're going through your own sufferings, and you learn to overcome them. And like you say, you get to a town and you can't find a hotel room, and you're looking and you're in like complete and utter panic. It's like 10 o'clock at night and you don't know where you're sleeping, and something will work out. It will 95%. Well, for me, it always worked out. There was always something, and then you can look back and you say, wow, okay. And even me, it's like the first times in Africa, I was like, oh, wow. I'm in Africa, it's like such a, it was a feeling. And I still look at the photo when I was crossing across the bridge from Senegal to Mali, just before the pandemic. I really can't imagine, that I ever went to Mali. I still can't believe that I went to Mali, and it was okay. It wasn't like the best idea security wise, and probably is even worse now than it was when I was there. But you look back and you're thinking, wow, I did it. That you overcome your fears, and you did it, and you survived, and you come back with stories to tell. With like, wow, you went to Mali. Like, yeah, and like, yeah.
And you come back stronger as well, which is another thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah, no, that's a great feeling. Another one that I would highlight is that reward that you are not meant to be there, but you are, and that feels great. That's it's even hard to put it in words when you look around, and it was not on the cards that you would be in that specific place and that period of your life, and for some weird reason it just happened. And of course, partially was your effort, your courage, your mindset, and it feels fantastic. It's probably one of the top achievements that one can pursue in life.
Yeah, because sometimes I look back and thinking, wow, all these more crazy destinations that I have been to, Sierra Leone, Liberia, Mali, Ivory Coast, Madagascar, Mozambique, Burundi. Like, who goes to Burundi, Personally, Johnny's been there, but I don't actually know anybody that's been to Burundi.
Yeah, you are the third person I met to Burundi. So it's Johnny, yourself, and a friend of mine who was working in Rwanda, and I think he crossed the border to Burundi, and he was there since, I think straight after the genocide in Rwanda. So it was it was quite tense. It was quite tense back then.
Yeah.
He's also a travel writer, like yourself, like us. Let's put it like that. So I want to ask you in terms of routine. So you tend to register your experiences, especially the journeys. So how do you go about writing? Do you write on the spot, or do you wait to be back home, or wherever home is? But I mean, I think you cannot afford that to travel for years. So how do you make sure that you have time and the right headspace to put the things on paper?
Yeah. Before the blog, everything was, written in a diary, and you just write down notes. The diary was like a friend when you didn't have anybody to talk to. You used to write down your feelings in the diary. As the way to offload them, So any particular time, the diary was always in my bag. You're walking around, you go to a cafe, you write your diary. You write the diary in the morning. You just write down some thoughts. You write down in the evening before you go to bed. You're at the bus station waiting. Write down some thoughts. And then, I just began to not start doing the diary. I just made a note of like the towns that I went to and where I stayed, for example, like that. And now I'm running a travel blog, nomadicbackpacker.com. that's also a little bit different in that can be you go somewhere with the intent of producing an article for whatever it is, like how to get from here to here, or the top 10 sites in Bujumbura or somewhere like that, and it becomes a job. And I noticed like this period of traveling, I'd be traveling a little bit faster, and I'm collecting information, and there's so much I want to write, but it gets quite exhausting. And then, like here in Athens, like I'm not gonna write about anything. I'm just gonna walk around. It makes me a bit more relaxed, and I'm back into traveling like I used to, before worrying about, oh, I got to get the right photo, I got to get a good photo for the blog post, or I got to get some details, yeah. And then I don't have energy to go and look at 10 top sites in Athens. I just don't have the energy anymore, nor the budget. So, but I do write, and a lot of the stuff I have are thoughts. I have them in my head now, as to writing them down. The feelings I have.
Yeah, it's a funny one, like when you are travel and writing at the same time, because sometimes the writing will interfere with the travel and vice versa. And you want to make sure that you don't want to pursue, let's say, a spicy situation just to put it on paper. You want to make sure that things happen to you spontaneously, not just you provoking something interesting. It's kind of a temptation if you are writing down your experiences. So I myself, I try to keep, I try to separate as much as I can the travel from the writer, even though they are the same person. But it's tricky. It's tricky because you can sometimes foresee that there's something there that will turn to a story, but you shouldn't force that. So you should just remain as, let's say, as normal as possible.
Yeah, and I like to write about logistics and important information that's useful for the traveler. For me, those type of blog posts are easier to write. So, and I wouldn't say I'm a natural writer. So, in that writing for an audience, to be a storyteller, I don't think I'm a good storyteller. Some people are, some people aren't. I'm good at collecting facts, of.
So you are more the journalist type or the informative type?
Yeah, the informative, yes. Because sometimes people say, "Oh, write a book about your experiences," and I wouldn't have a clue where to start. It's like, I went traveling, but how do I put it into words? I went 19,000 kilometers from Cairo to Cape Town, and I didn't take a plane. And how am I gonna put that into words? Because I had like mini adventures along the way, but I'm thinking, they're just like mini adventures. They're not like something.
Yeah, but that's where sorry to cut you off, but that's where the writing is. The writing will make it more colorful, even if the facts were not as colorful. The words we have that impact, that things will be more, I don't know, more dynamic or more exciting. That's where the storytelling comes. And I think sometimes just a matter of start. I think I don't want to think you're writing a routine. I'm just just something that I experienced, others did, and maybe you would encounter yourself if you would go that route.
Yeah, it's just finding a way to convey those feelings onto paper, isn't it? That I get a little bit of a mental block as to how I'm going to do it, how I'm going to start. Because I met some great storytellers, on my travels.
I'm sure.
And they were just like tiny little situations, but then they made it into a great story.
Yeah. It's quite common. So what's next for you in terms of travel and writing? Do you have any prospects that you want to share with us?
Yeah, I'm going to Cyprus on Tuesday, and I will cross into northern Cyprus. Then I'm going to take the ferry across to Turkey, and I'm going to go to Kurdistan. I have a couple of things to do in England, but then I will be going back to Mexico.
When in Mexico are you based?
In Mexico City.
Mexico City.
Yeah. I would like to. I think now I will concentrate, like do 2 or 3 weeks in one trip, or maybe 1 month in one trip. Go to Colombia, for example, for 4 weeks. Not such the longer trips that I was always famous for. 10 months and 12 months and 15 months and 18 months. I think those. It's not fair on my wife, and also I think those days are behind me now. Those crazy days of when I used to do that.
New chapters, new chapters.
Yeah, it's a new chapter in my life, So yeah, I'm very happy. So that's good,
Yeah. Would you be writing informative articles on those journeys in South America and now between the Mediterranean and Kurdistan, and where people can find your content?
Yeah, I'm posting on my blog, nomadicbackpacker.com. I treat the homepage as like a feed, so all the latest stories are on there, and I have everything is indexed, so you can always go to the regions, and on the menu at the top, and there's a drop down menu. If you go to regions, it drops down for all the regions, and then you can follow the arrow and go to Europe, for example, and it will list all the countries that I have blogged about in Europe. You have to bear in mind, 80 countries were before I had a blog. So there's all the stories from 1992 and everything else in Australia. They're not online, and they never will be. So even though I've been traveling for 33 years, yes, the blog is not complete, because the blogs didn't exist when I started traveling, and then the situation is just that those stories from that era didn't get published. It would be good to write about them, yes, particularly how we used to do things. I think that's a very interesting topic for the newer generation.
Yeah.
Because they don't know how we used to do things, like everything's like at your fingers, you got one of these, like that. We didn't have that, but they're shocked because they don't know how we used to do it, and they just can't comprehend that life functioned. But I say, trust me, it functioned quite okay, it was just it just worked. Now is different, Now it's a different age in life, isn't it? Not just the travel, everything.
Who knows what is on the pipeline, with AI and all that. I think let's say we have this conversation in 10 years' time. We were thinking of mobile phones as something, from the museum. Maybe there will be other devices that we cannot even picture or name.
Exactly. Yeah. AI is changing everything. Like from designers to writers, everything. They're robots. One robot does the work of 100 people. But what are we going to do with ourselves? We're going to be like unemployed. We're going to be eating Pringles, sitting around watching YouTube or Netflix. We're going to be unemployed because
watch my YouTube channel. That's fine. People watch my YouTube channel. I'm happy. That's fine. I thank AI for that. I'll be.
Yeah, but won't AI replace you? We're one of these little things.
Yeah,
that,
I thought about it. Like maybe in the future near future, we'll see podcasters who are robots. They are just programmed and they chat between themselves, and Yeah.
But the thing is about the AI, it's not thinking for itself yet. It's always got to get its information from somewhere. So if you're looking at ChatGPT, it's reading something that's already been published. So for the moment, us writers are, we're actually still needed because the AI, these whoever runs these things on Bing or Google, they steal our content, and put it up at the top position. And like they say, it's gathered from pages across the web. Like, I was like, oh, that's my information. And like even in Google steals it and calls it AI. We're going to be out of a job. So you just have to go traveling and just write for yourself. Or write for the people.
Like to do like some decent income with writing, and do you think that's something that you'll be able to do, for the next 5-10 years, or those days are gone?
I don't know. I think it's a very hard market to make money from writing unless you're a well-published author. Even blogging, I don't think the glory days were like 15 years ago with the blogging. The Google changed everything. The algorithms changed everything. AI has changed it even more completely. That blogs are becoming less relevant or less needed because, there's so many. In 2010 or whatever, there was like 30 travel bloggers. Now there's like 3 million all producing the same sort of content. So there's I'm not sure where the future with that lies. Because I think that the travel blogging market is oversaturated. Because everybody's been somewhere. There's a few places left to go, mostly in Africa actually, but there's a lot of places that there's like thousands of blogs, and you get to a point where things have changed. You got TikTok, like
people don't have the headspace to read anymore. It's all video.
You got to do a 10-second video because that's all people have the mindset of concentration level for 10 seconds, 15 seconds, just to watch some.
No one is going to watch to read I don't know 3 minutes article. It's just words. It doesn't tell anything.
People are producing like 15,000. I wrote 15,000 word blog posts. It's like, who's reading a 15,000 word blog post? And who's I hope you're going to get some viewers on this video because we're talking for 90 minutes a week. Hopefully we have.
I'm sure. I can see few people connected, and others will watch it the next few days. It's always like that. A mix of people joining the live session and some other step in. Maybe next week or so. But let's come to a closure. It's now 90 minutes. So I want to thank you for the chat. It was good to know from Africa on a first-hand perspective like yours. It's something that we don't come across every day. So I look forward for my trip more and more after we spoke. So look, all the best for your journeys between the Mediterranean and Kurdistan and then back to Mexico and South America. I think there's always more to explore. I think this whole travel venture is endless. So even though we think we are done, I think there is always something down the road. So I'm pretty sure next time we sit, we're going to discuss other adventures. I have no doubt. And the same with writing. There'll be new formats. There'll be different forms and shapes. So I'm sure there's more to come. So Trevor, all the best, and thanks for the chat.
Yep, thank you for having me on the show, and I hope for the readers, it's been entertaining and insightful points that will encourage you to go to Africa. It's a great continent.
Good stuff. So just want to tell the viewers what we have on the pipeline. We have a discussion on politics, on what's going on in the West on Wednesday, 7 p.m. British Irish time. And first we have the League of Ireland, so we're going to discuss football. And I think that's it for this week, but there'll be more one-on-one interviews end of the month. So all the best, everyone, and have a good week. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.